Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us at Grace today. My name is Nate Nims. If we haven't met yet, it's good to be with you on this Mother's Day. So thank you for braving the elements if you're here with us in person. Like, you made it through the wind and the rain, and there might be lions and tigers later. So best of luck. But you're still here, so thank you for being with us at Grace, and thank you for everyone that is with us online. It is good to be with everybody this morning. Today in the service, we are going to award some foundation scholarships. So this is a special day for the church, giving out those awards this year. And then following the service, the foundation invites you to stick around a bit, greet some of the students that received it. They've got refreshments across the hall in our fellowship hall, so you can get to know one another over there, greet the award winners, and have some time together after the service. So please stick around just for a little bit to greet those folks. Then in the bulletin, if you're with us in the sanctuary, there's a little insert. Starting this Friday, we're going to have some summer movie nights here at Grace. We're just trying to have some social things to get together outside this summer. So we're going to do some movies out by the playground this summer, starting on Friday next week with Encanto, and then a number of other movies later this year. So we've got that flyer. If you want to take that home as a reminder or give it to somebody and invite them to join you, you can do that, and we'll start having some fun together this spring and summer. Then we are still looking for some volunteers for our free medical clinic. If you want to help, especially with the check-in or a few other odds and ends, we can use some volunteers. So there's more information about that in the bulletin and a contact email that you can send if you want to help with the free clinic on Tuesday nights. Then if you want to, how we are tracking folks with us here at Grace, at least in person, is with these connection cards. You can fill it out, drop it in the basket on your way out after the service. It helps us to know that you're with us, and if you have any questions or comments, you can fill that out and let us know. For everybody online, you can say whatever you need to in the comments, and we're glad to have you with us as well. And then one thing to lift up now and for prayers and for you all to know as the service begins is that Ione Shattuck passed away late last night, about 10 minutes before midnight. She passed away. So services are pending. There will likely be something for Ione on Thursday this week. Nothing is set yet, but please keep Ione in your thoughts and prayers. With that, I invite Anna to lead us in our call to worship.
Please rise in body or in spirit and join me in the call to worship, which will appear on the screen. God sends light to us this day and invites us to meet one another with the light of love. Light breaks forth like the dawn, drawing us into relationship with God and one another. God calls us to trust with steady hearts and to serve with righteous compassion. May our lives reflect the light of God's love. We will now join together in singing hymn 440 in the red hymnal, Let There Be Light, verses 1, 2, 5, and 6. Please join me as we recite the opening prayer, which will appear on the screen. God, our light and our salvation, shelter us in your love. Together we gather with joy to worship you this day. We come with prayer and music to celebrate your love. We come with longing and hope to seek your presence. Be with us now, O God, and bring us into your light. Amen.
I invite you to be seated, and we'll now have Mark Clark come forward to award our foundation scholarship. So, Mark?
Good morning. Welcome on a beautiful Mother's Day. I'm pleased to be here representing the Grace United Methodist Foundation. Today, we are pleased to announce the awards for the foundation scholarships for the next academic year. These scholarships are named in the memory of longtime member and supporter Cecil Bolsinger and in the memory of Heather Hartline Finaro. This foundation was created to provide a vehicle whereby members and friends of Grace could leave gifts for the benefit and future of Grace Church. These funds would be safe, earning interest each year, and only the earnings would be used for the benefit of the church, its programs, and its members. Cecil was a firm believer of the foundation concept and was one of its first benefactors. This year is the 25th year of giving scholarships. With the 17 awards that we are presenting this year, we will have hit a total of 417 scholarships since Cecil started the program. With the $20,200 of awards this year, we will have given out $433,000 in awards. Over $400,000 in scholarships, and the principal still remains. I, as a representative of the scholarship committee, hope that you might consider the foundation in your financial planning and build on this great foundation started by others. It can be our greatest legacy for Grace. This is the 13th year without Cecil being here, and it's a good time for us to remember Cecil and all he did for the Grace Church while he was here. At this time, I think I saw his daughter, Sandra Bolsinger-Lamb, who's coming from Cedar Rapids, I think maybe walked in. We'd love to her if she would like to come down and be on this side just to be here with us and celebrate it. Sandra, it's wonderful. I would also like those who are getting scholarships or a representative to stay socially distanced, but if you'd come down, it'd be great because we'd like to celebrate that. So come on down, don't wait for names and other things. It's our tradition to generally announce these awards at probably one of the most busiest times in May with proms and graduations and finals for college students and that type of thing, so we're always glad to see so many able to be here. And the winners and awards this year are Mason DeLange, University of Iowa; Fiona Donnelly, Drake University; Liam Donnelly, Bright College at Drake University; Owen Donnelly, Iowa; Isaac Dotson, Iowa; Olivia Dotson, Iowa; Colin Easler, Iowa. We have Sam Hoffman, University of Northern Iowa. We have Lydia Johnston, Iowa. We have Mary McFetrich, Scripps; Avery Rubin, Arizona State; Sarah Sahalen, Northwest Missouri State; Elsie Wilcoxon, Des Moines Area Community College; Ian Wilkie Shapiro, Iowa; Evan Whitkey, DMAC; and the Heartline Finaro winners, Emily Fouch and Jacob Fouch for the Heartline Finaro. Would you greet these with a welcome and congratulations? Again, our thanks to the Bolsinger family, the Heartline Finaro family, and all the efforts of the Grace Foundation. Thanks. You can return your seats. Sandra, thank you for being here. And again, we hope to have these meet in Fellowship Hall after the service for festivities and welcome. Congratulations to all.
Thank you, Mark. And to give you all an opportunity, if you want to continue to thank and continue the work of the foundation and build on what we have already done over the past 25 years with these scholarships, there is an envelope in the bulletin or a way that you can give online if you want to support the foundation scholarships, especially on this Mother's Day, if you want to give in memory of a mother or grandmother or anyone to support the continued growth of this foundation and make sure that we can do this for decades to come and continue to make a difference in students' lives. You can do so if you wish. So Anna will now read us our scripture this morning.
Today's scripture reading is from 1 John chapter 1, verses 5 and 6. This is the message that we have heard from him and announced to you. God is light, and there is no darkness in him at all. If we claim we have fellowship with him and live in darkness, we are lying and do not act truthfully.
So this morning at Grace, we are continuing a little series of sermons that we're doing on the letter of 1 John. We're going through it a few verses at a time so that we can try to understand what this letter is all about. Because John's sort of thesis, the main point that he wants us to know, is written later in the letter. It's in chapter 4 that John writes, "Dear friends, let us love each other because love is from God, and everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. The person who doesn't love does not know God because God is love." John is writing so that we might know what this love is like. And we started this last week, and last week we made it through 4 verses. Today we're looking at 2, so we are just like breakneck speed through this. And the next 25 years that we go through this and continue to award scholarships, we'll really see how stuff goes. But if you were with us last week, one of the things that you might remember about this letter is that it's not really a letter. It's not written to a specific person. There's no sort of greeting at the start of the letter. It's more of a sermon. So modern biblical scholarship debates this some, but church tradition has said since the sort of mid-first century to the end of the first century that the letters of John were most likely written by the author of the Gospel of John, and that on the other side of Easter, they're trying to get us to answer the question, what does it mean for us to live now? Like how do we live out this light and hope of God's love? What do we do with our lives now that we know that Christ is risen? That's the question that John wants us to know the answer to. And so John writes to us today, this is the message that we have heard from him and announced to you. God is light, and there is no darkness in God at all. If we claim we have fellowship with God and live in darkness, we do not actually live in the light, and we are lying and do not act truthfully. So one of the things to notice about what John says from the start is that this is the message that we have heard from him and announced to you. So John is saying this is some news that we've got directly. This is something that I am a witness to. This is something that my eyes have seen and my hands have held. John's not just writing to fill up a page. John is writing to share this good news of God's love because it is something that he has heard directly from Christ. It's not rumor or speculation. John says, this is something that I have heard. And have you ever heard a rumor about yourself and wished your life was that interesting? Like, man, if only that was true, my life would be so much more exciting, right? Like, we're doing this sort of Summer of Love little sermon series gimmicky thing because it's the summer and we're talking about love, so Summer of Love. And of course, I've been, going down a wormhole of listening to the hippie stuff of the 60s and 70s, and eventually I'll start wearing tie-dye all the time, and right? Like, there's just going to be this development over the summer. And then, of course, because we're in this Summer of Love, that led to The Who, which led to Tommy, which means I'm going to start getting into pinball. And then this whole sanctuary is just going to be replaced with an arcade where we play pinball by the sense of smell. That's the kind of rumor that you could hear about me. And I wish my life was that much fun. But really, things are much more boring, and I just hang out with my cats most of the time, right? But there are all these rumors that get popped up. There's all this speculation that can happen, but John is saying this is not rumor, this is the truth. God is light, and in God there is no darkness at all. And the theme of God being light is seen throughout the scriptures. It starts in Genesis with that poetry of creation saying that God brings light into the world. And then in Psalm 36, the psalmist says that God, within you is the spring of life. In your light, we see light. And then in Psalm 43, they ask that God, send your light and truth, those will guide me. Or the prophet Isaiah says to God, arise, shine, your light has come, the Lord's glory has shone upon you. And then Isaiah continues by saying, the sun will no longer be your light by day, nor will the moon shine for illumination by night. The Lord will be your everlasting light. Your God will be your glory. Your sun will no longer set. Your moon will no longer wane. The Lord will be an everlasting light for you. Your days of mourning will be ended. There's all of this passages written in the Hebrew scriptures throughout the Old Testament about how God is this light that shines in our lives, that brings about these moments where our mourning is ended, where the night no longer comes, where there is this hope that continues within us. And then in the Gospel of John, we don't just see that Jesus talks about God as light. Jesus is the true light that gives light to everyone. That's one of the things that John writes about Jesus. And then later in the Gospel of John, Jesus says about himself, I am the light of the world. And Jesus says that he came about so that we might be children of the light. But then Jesus says, I'm the light of the world. And then in the Sermon on the Mount, probably Jesus' most well-known sermon, Jesus says, you are the light of the world. During the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus says specifically, you are the light of the world. A city on top of a hill can't be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a basket. Instead, they put it on top of a lampstand, and it shines for all those who are in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before people so that they can see your good things and praise your God who is in heaven. So Jesus, the light of the world, says that you are the light of the world. That you have a light within you that shines so that everyone around you is able to see. So what kind of light do you shine before others? Now we're Methodists, which means we sit in silence like this. This is what we're comfortable with, these sort of moments of maybe a light laugh and then back to silence. We are not the most enthusiastic bunch. We definitely do not like to pat ourselves on the back, even though in 25 years our foundation scholarships have given away over $400,000, which is a pretty big achievement. But on Monday, are you going to clap as much tomorrow as you did today? Or is that sort of excitement that you felt and that sort of pride of, holy, what did we do? This is incredible. That just sort of fades away. We don't get excited all that much. But if you want to, if you go back to work tomorrow and somebody asks you, what did you do with your weekend? You can say, nothing special. On Saturday, I did a little bit of yard work, tried to take care of things on the house, and then, Sunday morning gave away over $20,000 in scholarships. How about you? Right? That could be your coffee talk tomorrow morning. If we could be excited about this and claim the light that we shine before others, or there's something else that our church is doing right now that we should be proud of. So we have a church bus. Some of you took it this morning to get here to church. And most times during the week, it sits in the garage between Sunday to Sunday and just doesn't run any other time. But Rod Doherty, one of our trustees, worked with LSI so that we could get connected to some immigrants and refugees that are resettled in the community. So right now, Rod is doing the morning and afternoon drop-off and pickup for 8 kids at 4 different schools in Waukee with our church bus. Yeah. That's a pretty good light to shine before others. And if you want to help shine a light before those same folks, did you know that gas is expensive right now? So if on this Mother's Day you wanted to honor your mother by saying, Rod, here's some gas money to shine those kids back and forth, that would be a huge help for the church so that we can continue to do this work because that light shines before others. Or last week at the free medical clinic, there were at least like 8 kids that showed up for physicals. They needed them for sports, they needed them for school. And in addition to all the other sort of medical care that happens, these kids showed up, got food, and then hung outside and played basketball for about an hour. And they had a lot of fun. And we just got to see that light shine in their joy because we were here to connect with them. There is a lot of light that gets shined, so celebrate that. Don't cover it up. Be proud of that light and shine it before others. And if you're not in the habit yet of looking at the guide to prayer and study, every day there's a reading, thought, and prayer that ties back to the message for the week. We put it on the Facebook page every morning. It's on our website. It's in the bulletin. This week, it's all about living with that love and light. So if you're not sure what it looks like for you to shine a light, take a look at those this week, and it will hopefully give you a few ideas. Now, the author and the one-time presidential candidate, Marianne Williamson, once wrote that our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, and fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small doesn't serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that others won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine. That is a fantastic quote. Unfortunately, it does not work well as a policy statement, so her presidential campaign did not last the longest. But it is still a great quote. You are meant to shine. And it is probably true that our deepest fear is not our fear of failure, but our fear of success and really shining a light before others. Now, the most common fear in the United States is public speaking. More than anything else, we are afraid of talking in front of a crowd. And that is a fear that I know well because every week, not that you want to know this, I sweat through my shirt multiple times. Like I'm always terrified every single time I stand up here, and I just hope you can't see the beads of sweat coming down off my face every single week. But even though I know this fear well, I think what we are afraid of is less public speaking and more the honesty that might come with that. Because if you said to a friend, it has always been my dream to canoe the Mississippi River, eventually that friend is going to ask you, like, when are you going to start? Our deepest fear might not be failure, but success, or even taking that first step to try. We forget that we have a light that we are meant to shine with, and Jesus, the light of the world, says, you are the light of the world. Let your light shine before others so that they might see your good deeds and give thanks to your God in heaven. John writes that when we let our light shine, that's when we find fellowship with God. Now, if you were with us last week, we looked at the word fellowship a little bit. In Greek, the language that this letter was first written in, it's koinonia. Koinonia is the Greek word for fellowship, and it literally means partnership. It could also be translated as church or community or communion. But this fellowship, this partnership, is translated also as participation. And in our verse today, it's got just a slightly different meaning than participation, because John writes, if we claim we have fellowship with God but live in darkness, we are lying and do not act truthfully. So John is asking you, where do you live? Where do you feel the most at home? Are you living sort of out of the fullness of the light that God created in you and for you to live with, or are you letting other things get in the way of that cast shadows upon you? Are you letting God's light get obscured? Are you at home with yourself? Are you living out of the light of your life, or are other things getting in the way of that? You could think about it like this. Imagine that this afternoon the storm clears out and we decide it's finally spring. It's going to be in the 90s tomorrow, so it's worthless. We're going to play kickball this afternoon. We just decide, church kickball tournament this afternoon, playground. Mother's Day plans are all scrapped. We're playing kickball. So we start playing kickball, and of course, it is the most serious of games, which is why it is almost exclusively played by elementary school students. So we're going to play kickball out by the playground, and it's the bottom of the ninth. We have been neck and neck with our teams, and you are up to kick. You've got runners on all the bases, and I pitch to you, and you kick that red playground ball, and it's headed towards the playground fence. Now, I will admit that I am not always the best team player, and I am very competitive. So even though I'm the pitcher, I leave the pitcher's mound and I run towards center field because I want to catch that ball. I don't want you to beat me. So I run and I try to catch that ball as it's headed towards the preschool fence. But what all of us failed to notice is that over the weekend, one thing to watch for this summer, our preschool does a little garden on the 38th Street side of the playground, and they started to set up those tomato cages. So the tomato cages are out, and I, stretch to catch the kickball, which means I then land on a tomato cage, which means I'm then impaled by a tomato cage. Regular, Sunday afternoon at Grace, just these things happen. So you get the grand slam kick, you win the game, but you don't want to rub it in too much, so instead of doing your victory lap, you check in on me while I'm laying on the ground, impaled by a tomato cage. You call 911. They've heard this call so many times. They're used to it. Everything goes as it's supposed to, and eventually the ambulance shows up, and you want to ride along in the ambulance with me, one, because you're a little worried, but also you want to rub it in that you won the game. So we get to the hospital, and they do all that we need to do, and they start admitting me into surgery. What do you want the doctors and nurses that are operating me to think about themselves? Do you want them to be in a moment where they think, I have never seen this kind of injury before. I don't think I can handle it. If you are preparing for surgery yourself, if you are getting ready to go under anesthesiology, do you want the person putting you under anesthesia to think in the back of your mind, did I turn off the stove this morning or not? Do you want them to be distracted? Do you want them to doubt their abilities and skills? Or do you want them to know, maybe, even though I have not seen anyone impaled by a tomato cage before, I can still do this. And I am not alone, right? Do you want the doctor and the surgeons and the nurses and all those folks getting ready in the operating room to know, we can do this? We have the skills, we have the talents, we have the abilities. This is something we can take care of. We're good. We have one another. We can let our light shine. If you would want them to have that kind of voice in their heads, why would you let any other voice get in the back of your head? If you would want them to have sort of the fullness of their abilities and skills and gifts and talents is in the front of their mind, if you wouldn't want them to be distracted by all the things that obscure what they are best at and what they are here to do, why do you let those voices and things get in the front of your mind and keep you from remembering what light you have to shine before others? Because you are here to shine. In our reading today, the word that John uses for darkness, the Greek word is skotos. And skotos often gets translated as dark, but it literally means, well, it's literal and figurative. It means shady. It means anything that obscures the light. The most direct English translation of skotos is shadow. So are you living in the light of your life, or is there something that is casting a shadow of your life? Is it obscuring things a little bit so your light doesn't get to shine? I once went to a lecture where the theologian and philosopher Peter Rollins was speaking, and there was a time for questions and answers. If you have never been to an academic or scholarly presentation for religion and philosophy, you never want to stick around for the questions and answers. Because it is not questions and answers, it is mini speeches and then more mini speeches, right? Like if you had a nickel at one of these conferences for every time someone said, well, actually, you could buy Twitter and Tesla right now, right? Like these conferences go on and on. People love the sounds of their own voices, a lot like I do. But you don't want to sit through that all day. So somebody stood up at this academic conference and they said, clearly you're a smart person, but do you really believe in this resurrection stuff? And Pete Rollins took a moment to think about the question and then said, I will fully admit that I deny the resurrection, and anybody that knows me knows that I do as well. I am not afraid to say it publicly, no matter what people might think. Because I deny the resurrection of Christ every time I do not serve at the feet of the oppressed. Each time I turn my back on the poor, I deny the resurrection of Christ when I close my ears to the cries of the downtrodden and lend my support to injustice instead of mercy. However, there are moments where I affirm the resurrection, and they might be few and far between, but I affirm the resurrection when I stand up for those that have been forced to live on their knees, when I speak for those that no longer have tongues, when I cry for those without tears left to shed. Then I affirm the resurrection. So with the light of your life, what are you affirming or what are you denying? Are you living out of that fellowship? Are you at home with your light? Or is there a shadow that gets in a way? Now, the English translation of what John says can sound pretty harsh. John writes, if we claim to have fellowship with God and live in the darkness, we are lying and do not act truthfully. And that sounds harsh, and that's because it is. The point of this sermon is you are a terrible liar, so best of luck. We'll see you next week. Grace and peace. Don't forget there's some coffee. Say hello to everybody that won a scholarship. We'll see you later. Since giving sermons is a big part of my job, I decided a number of years ago that if I'm going to talk to people, I have to listen to people too. So every week I listen to a handful of sermons on whatever it is that we are talking about. And one person said, that's exactly what John means. You're a terrible liar. You're going to hell. Good luck. And I just thought to myself, that doesn't sound like good news at all. Like, where is Jesus in that statement? Because if God is love, and that seems to be the point of 1 John, God is love, and in love we know God, then why would God turn their back on us like that? So what John writes in Greek is just a little different than the English translation, and it's hard to do a direct translation from English to Greek, right? You can think about it kind of like this. When Chevy made the Nova, nobody thought to know that in Spanish it means no-go, right? Like sometimes translations just don't always work. So the most direct translation of what John says in the reading is this. If we should say that fellowship we have with God, and yet in the darkness we should walk, we lie and do not practice the truth. Now, what John means by walking, we're going to get a bit more into next week, but the important thing to know about what John says is that John's talking about practice. John is not saying that we have to get everything perfect. John says that we see this love as something that we practice, that the light of our lives is something that we practice. And if you are practicing something, that does not mean you are perfect at it. That means you're trying. That means you are opening yourself up to doing it. That means you are participating in it. So are you practicing the light that God created you to live with, or are you letting other things get in the way of that? Now this is what finally brings me to the chair, so hopefully you remember this at least as well as the kickball story, and better than that, hopefully you remember something about God loving you, because that's really the point. So imagine that your mom gave you an antique chair for Mother's Day. It's been passed down through the family, and one Sunday morning, you decide you got to find like just the right spot to get it. You don't know where it's going to go in your house, but it's an antique that's been passed down from one person to another in your family. Your mom finally gave it to you, so you got it. And you just, where are you going to put this chair? Right? Like this obviously isn't the best spot for it in here. But if anyone wants to, we can make this the donorship special, and this could be your seat on Sunday mornings. You can lounge and enjoy and just sit back and relax, and we can recognize folks here. So, consider making a donation, and we'll put a name plaque on this and go from there. So, but you want to set up this chair in just the right spot, and you can't figure it out, and so you're sitting in your new chair, you're drinking your coffee, and moving a chair is just a hassle. So you decide to take a break, and you want to play Wordle. So you start playing Wordle, and it was a tough word today, right? Like what's with the double letters? Come on. New York Times is making it so much harder than it needs to be. But you're playing, and then all of a sudden, you get a call, so your phone shakes, and then you knock your nug over. Your mug spills, you've spilled on your lap, you've spilled on your chair, and it's your mom that called to say, hey, Wordle was really easy today. I have nothing left to do with the rest of my day. I want to see where you put that chair. I want to see how it's holding the room together. So now you have a spilled cup of coffee on your chair, and you're thinking to yourself, I ruined an antique. This has been in my family for generations. Like, what? Well, you can try to cover it with a pillow. That works. Or, thankfully, you've got this nice throw blanket, so you can cover that up. And clearly, no one's going to know that there's a stain underneath there, right? Like, everything will get a pass. Or if worse comes to worse, you can just, flip the seat and hope that nobody notices that the bottom is now flipped. If your mom is coming over to see the gift that you've been given and it's stained, how are you going to try to hide that stain? Or are you going to deal with it? What kind of life are you going to practice? Are you practicing a life where you just cover things up, where you conceal things, where you let things get in the way of the truth? Or do you try practicing honesty? Do you try dealing with the things that are in front of you and practicing a life that really lives into the light that we are created with and for? Or to take that metaphor or this little parable a little further, it can easily feel like we stain the gift we've been given. That there are things that we have done to us, that we've done to others, that others have done to us, and we feel stained and spoiled as if we are a chair that now has a coffee stain that will never wash away. We have been ruined and restored so we don't feel like we have a light to shine, because if a light shines through a coffee stain, it doesn't look that good. It just looks brown and dirty. But this is the message that we have heard from Christ, and John announces to you. God is light, and in God there is no darkness at all. So you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to cover up that stain. You don't have to hide that stain. You just have to trust that God will cleanse it. That God will not hold that against us, because the God that we know in Christ washes the disciples' feet and says, you are clean. You are welcome here. You are loved. You don't have to be afraid. So you might feel like you have those stains. You might feel like you are beyond restoration, but God says you have a light to shine. Jesus, the light of the world, says, let your light shine before others. So don't be afraid and don't obscure the light of your life. Don't try to cover it up, but trust that God is with you, and practice living in the light of God's love. Practice finding your way home to that sort of grace and peace this week and always. As we come to a time of prayer, there are a few folks that shined a light into our lives, that continue to shine a light into our lives, that we want to remember this morning. Bonnie Jean Christensen, a friend of the church, passed away this last week, and Ione Shattuck passed away last night as well. We want to remember Mary Ennis. She's currently in hospice care. Carlos Jane, who's in hospice care as well. There are a lot of folks in our church community that have been in the hospital recently, and we know that those folks have shined a light into our lives, and we want to shine a light back. So think about those folks in your hearts and minds. And for people on Facebook or YouTube, in the comments, feel free to add whatever prayers you want. If you have a prayer that you want to share with the church, you can put it on the card for your attendance and leave that in the baskets, and we'll be in prayer with you. But let us come to a time of prayer now. Jesus, you call us to be light for the world. You want us to live out of the fullness of the light that your Spirit created us for, because God shined a light into this world and then shined it into all of our hearts so that we might illuminate one another and share your grace and peace, whatever we do. So on this day where we have celebrated these scholarships and shined a light into these students' lives, let us remember that your light continues to shine in them and in each one of us. So when we feel stained or spoiled, when we might feel ruined as if we have spilled coffee on ourselves and we can't come clean, remind us that your light continues to shine and your Spirit will always illuminate the light within us. We are not beyond your reach. We are never beyond your love. We are always welcomed home. So let us live into the practice of that great love this week and always. God, you know the prayers that we have said aloud, and you know the ones that are on our hearts that we can't bring ourselves yet to say. You know the worries and fears that we have in this world related to all that we hear in the news and all those stories that come and go in our day-to-day life. God, there are so many places where we need your light to shine, where things have obscured it. So let us be the people that shine a light into those places and share your love wherever it is most needed. All this we pray through Christ, who taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. So the choir is going to come forward and sing their anthem, and as they do, you're invited to prepare your offering if you have one to give this morning. If you're here with us in the sanctuary, you can give in one of the baskets on your way out, or you can give online at gracedesmoines.org. But giving financially and supporting the work of the church is one way that you can help us shine a light back into the community, but also remember all the other ways that you can shine a light into people's lives this week.
Was
invite you to rise in body or in spirit for our closing hymn. We're going to be singing Amazing Grace. It's number 378 in the hymnal and will be on the screens. But I want to let you know we're singing it to a different melody. So this is the Summer of Love, and with that, we're switching things up a little bit. So we're going to sing Amazing Grace to the tune of House of the Rising Sun. Because it actually works really, really well. So you probably know the lyrics, or at least are familiar, and if you need a little help following the melody, the choir and Sean will be leading us. So let's join together in singing Amazing Grace. I hope y'all like that as much as I did. Right? Thank you, Sean. Thank you, Ann. So go into this week bright, shining like the sun, because Jesus, the light of the world, says you are the light of the world. No one has a light just to hide it or cover it up, so let that light shine. Don't let your life be lived in obscurity or shadow. Shine your light before others, because that is what you are here to do. So with that, go in peace, and remember to spend some time across the hall with the refreshments that our foundation has provided this morning, and congratulate the scholarship winners this morning. So thank you for being with us, and until next week, grace and peace.